Marie never wanted to live like a ghost, but after Alexandra died, that's exactly what it felt like, walking through the house he built with his bare hands, each wooden beam whispering memories she couldn't forget. The living room still held his scent, a faint mix of cedar wood and old books. The kitchen tile cracked slightly near the stove reminded her of the time he burned dinner, trying to surprise her on their anniversary. And the staircase, it creaked the same way it did when he'd tiptoed down in the morning, pretending not to wake their daughter Elise. This house wasn't just shelter. It was Alexandra's love set in stone, sealed in wood and stitched into the fabric of Marie's every day. She didn't just live here, she grieved here. She raised Elise here. And through it all, the walls stood tall, not just holding the roof, but holding her together. Jean wasn't Alexandra. He didn't have calloused hands or a builder's gaze. He didn't fix squeaky doors or hum old French songs while painting the hallway. But Jean had something else, something Marie thought she might never feel again: gentleness. He spoke in soft tones. He asked questions and actually listened. He didn't fill the silence with solutions, he let it breathe. After years of aching loneliness, Jean's kindness felt like sunlight on skin that had forgotten warmth. At first, Elise watched him like a hawk, quiet, guarded. She'd sit at the edge of the room pretending to read, but never turning a page. Jean never pushed. Instead, he'd leave tiny notes near her cereal bowl. "Hope you have a great day," or "Your drawing yesterday was amazing." Slowly, she thawed. One evening, she handed him her crayon drawing of a house with 3 people inside. It was the first time Marie saw Jean included in Elise's little world. Marie took that as a sign maybe, just maybe, love didn't die with Alexandra. Maybe it came back in quieter ways you had to lean in to hear. It was just after dinner, one of those quiet evenings when the dishes were done. Elise was upstairs reading, and the house felt warm and still. That's when Jean brought it up. He didn't make eye contact at first. He just ran his thumb along the rim of his coffee mug and said, "I was thinking, maybe Mom could come stay with us. Just for a little while. Just until she feels better." Marie's heart skipped. Clare! That name alone stirred something sharp in her chest. Marie had only met Jean's mother a handful of times, but even then, the woman's cold eyes and clipped words had left their mark. Clare didn't say much, but when she did, it cut. Still, Marie didn't say no. She looked at Jean, his tired eyes, the way he leaned forward, like the question weighed on him. He loved his mother. And he trusted Marie enough to ask, so Marie nodded slowly. "All right," she said, her voice calm but careful. "She can stay. But Jean, this is still Elise's home, and mine. There need to be boundaries." Jean reached for her hand, grateful. "I promise," he said, "just a little while." But somewhere deep inside Marie, something whispered, nothing about Clare Beaumont is ever just a little while. Clare Beaumont didn't walk into the house. She entered like royalty, returning to a palace she'd always believed belonged to her. Her heels clicked sharply on the hardwood floor. Her suitcase thudded against the entryway. And before the door even closed behind her, she was already pointing and judging. "This is it," she scoffed, eyes scanning the modest foyer. "I thought Alexandra left you something more respectable. This looks like a dollhouse built for ants." Marie felt the sting immediately, but said nothing. She had braced for this, but it still hit harder than expected. Claire's gaze swept the living room with a sneer, pausing on the photos of Elise and Marie on the mantel. She didn't smile, didn't acknowledge them. Instead, she turned to Jean and said sharply, "Your back will hurt sleeping in that thing. And that wallpaper, what was she thinking? It's practically shouting bargain bin." Marie forced a breath through her nose. She could feel the storm gathering, and Clare was just getting started. "Jean, darling," Clare purred as she walked toward the guest room, dragging her bag like it was beneath her. You married a widow with a child. That's no small burden." The words landed like a slap. Jean opened his mouth to speak, but Clare cut him off with a raised hand. "I'm just being honest," she added with a shrug. "Honesty is how families stay strong." Marie watched her disappear down the hallway, and for the first time since Alexandra's death, she felt like a stranger in her own home. It started over breakfast. Clare sat at the table like she owned it, spreading jam on toast as if this house, this kitchen belonged to her. She didn't look up when she spoke. "You know," she said, buttering her words like her toast, "when a man marries a widow, especially one with a child, he signs up for a lifetime of cleaning up someone else's mess." Marie blinked slowly, her coffee frozen halfway to her lips. Clare continued unfazed. "I'm not saying you're a bad woman, Marie, but let's be honest, Jean could have done better. A clean slate, no baggage, no complications." Her voice dipped on that last word, like Elise was some kind of stain on their life. Marie put her cup down firmly. "Clare," she said evenly, "Elise is not baggage. She's my daughter. She belongs here." Clare finally looked up, her smile razor sharp. "Well, she certainly makes her presence known. Running around, making noise, leaving her toys everywhere. Honestly, I don't know how you stand it. A child should be taught not to intrude." Jean shifted in his seat, but said nothing. Marie turned to him, searching his face. One word, just one, could have leveled the playing field. He looked down at his plate and kept chewing. It didn't happen all at once. At first, it was small things, subtle, almost harmless. Clare replaced Marie's kitchen towels with her own thicker ones. She rearranged the pantry, muttering about chaotic shelves and poor organization. Then came the spices. Marie's gentle blends of thyme and basil were tossed in favor of Clare's sharp, overpowering seasonings. "If you're going to cook," Clare said one evening, "at least do it with flavor. Jean always liked my lamb better anyway." Marie didn't reply, but the real invasion came when Clare started entering Elise's room. Without knocking, she'd tidy things Elise didn't want touched, throw away drawings, fold away stuffed animals, and replace Elise's floral bedsheets with simpler, grown-up ones. "She's too old for all this baby nonsense," Clare said with a wave of her hand. "That girl needs structure, not imagination." Elise stopped smiling around the house, stopped humming when she brushed her hair, stopped leaving the door open. Marie saw it all. And for the first time in her life, she felt like a guest in the house she once called home. It happened on a Monday. Marie had stayed late at work for a project deadline. The sun had already dipped behind the trees by the time she pulled into the driveway, expecting to be greeted by the sound of Elise's laughter or her running footsteps. Instead, the house was silent. Too silent. The front door creaked as she opened it. "Elise," she called, stepping into the stillness. No response. No pitter-patter of feet. No cheerful voice. Her heart began to thud. She found her daughter on the back porch. Elise sat on the cold wooden steps, clutching her stuffed bunny and a half-zipped backpack. Her face was blotchy, her eyes red and swollen. Marie dropped to her knees beside her, already knowing something was wrong. "Sweetheart," she whispered, "what happened?" Elise sniffled, voice barely above a whisper. "Grandma said I was too loud, too messy. She said I don't belong here. She told me to get out of my room." Marie froze. "She told me," Elise continued through fresh tears, "to live in the dog box. She said she's taking my bed now, that I'm in the way." It was the kind of sentence no mother should ever have to hear from her child, and Marie's silence only lasted a second before it turned into fire. Marie couldn't breathe. She stood frozen at the edge of the porch, staring at her daughter, knees tucked into her chest, arms wrapped tightly around her backpack like it was the only thing keeping her from falling apart. "Elise," Marie whispered, but her voice broke halfway. She rushed forward, dropping to her knees, hands trembling as she touched her daughter's face. Elise didn't even look up. She just leaned into her mother's touch like a wilted flower, desperate for sunlight. "Who did this?" Marie asked, her voice now low, shaking, dangerous. And then the words came out broken and soaked in tears. "She said, 'I don't belong here, Mama,'" Elise whispered. "She said, 'This isn't my house anymore, that I'm just noise, that I should sleep outside.'" Marie's stomach turned, her hands clenched into fists. She pulled Elise close, tighter than ever before, and held her like she was trying to put all the broken pieces back together with her arms alone. "No," she choked out. "No, baby, listen to me." Marie pulled back just enough to look her daughter in the eyes, her voice like thunder behind trembling lips. "You are not a burden. You are not noise. This house was built for you. This life, our life, is yours. No one, and I mean no one, throws my child out of her own home." Then, with fire in her spine and steel in her heart, Marie stood, and she walked toward the front door like a storm coming home. Marie didn't knock. She stormed through the front door with Elise behind her, the cold air trailing their steps like ghosts. Clare was in the living room, legs crossed, tea in hand, as if she were royalty, entertaining herself in someone else's kingdom. "Well, look who finally decided to come home," Clare said, her voice slick with disdain. "Your daughter's been nothing but trouble today." Marie didn't blink. She walked straight to the center of the room and stood tall, her voice sharp, clear, unshakable. "Pack your things. You're leaving. Now." Clare blinked once, then laughed. "Aren't you precious?" she said mockingly. "You forget your place. I am Jean's mother. You're just a woman he took in, broken and lucky." Marie stepped closer. "There's nothing lucky about surviving what I've been through, and there's nothing weak about protecting my child." Claire's smile faded. "Don't play martyr with me," she spat. "This house isn't yours. It's Jean's. And as his mother, I belong here more than you ever will." "You don't belong anywhere my daughter feels unsafe," Marie snapped. Then Clare did the unthinkable. She stood up, her teacup clinking against the table, and raised her hand, aiming to slap Marie across the face. But Marie's hand shot up faster. She caught Clare's wrist mid-air, eyes burning. "Don't you dare." The room stood still, and for the first time, Clare looked afraid. The moment Marie released Clare's wrist, the older woman staggered backward, off balance, chest heaving. What have you done?" Clare gasped, gripping the armrest as her face turned pale. Marie stepped back, her heartbeat thundering in her ears. Then came the sound of the front door swinging open. Jean. He froze in the doorway, eyes darting from Marie's clenched fists to Clare, now slumped in the chair and clutching her chest. "Mom," he called, rushing over. "Mom, what's wrong?" Clare moaned weakly, her lips trembling. She attacked me. My heart." Jean turned on Marie like a switch had flipped. "What did you do?" he shouted. "Are you out of your mind? You pushed her too far." Marie's voice cracked. "She was going to hit me. She told Elise to sleep outside." But he wasn't listening. Jean knelt by his mother, holding her hand, eyes filled with rage. "You did this, Marie. You." Marie's fingers fumbled for her phone. Her hands shook as she dialed emergency services, voice taut and precise. "She's having chest pains," Marie told the operator. "She's breathing, but barely. Please hurry." Even as she gave the address, she knew something irreversible had happened. Not to Clare, to everything between her and Jean. Marie didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Elise curled against her like a heartbeat she couldn't afford to lose. Every word, every accusation from Jean replayed over and over like a broken tape. "You did this, Marie. You." By dawn, her decision was made. At 8:02 a.m., she called the locksmith. "Today," she said, "I want every lock in this house changed. Every single one." By noon, the locksmith had arrived. His tools clinked like symbols of closure as he worked. Marie didn't watch. She was upstairs packing, Jean's things, shirts still pressed from the dry cleaners, shoes he never cleaned, books with his name in the front cover, the photo frame with their first Christmas together, face down in the box. When the final click of the new deadbolt echoed through the house, Marie exhaled for the first time in hours. She sent the text. "Your things are on the porch until 8 p.m. This is my house. Don't come back." Then she placed the boxes by the front door, neat, emotionless, like removing a tumor with surgical precision. And for the first time since Clare arrived, the house felt like it belonged to her again. The gravel crunched under the weight of Jean's tires as his car pulled into the driveway just before sunset. He didn't knock, he didn't call. He just stood there, staring at the boxes stacked neatly on the porch. His shirts, his shoes, his books, his life, waiting outside the home he once shared with Marie and Elise. On top of the largest box was a single sheet of paper taped carefully in place. He peeled it off and read it. "You chose silence. I chose my daughter." Jean didn't move for a long time. The wind rustled the edges of the paper in his hand, but he stood completely still, as if hoping the house might change its mind. Inside, behind the curtains, Marie watched, not with hatred, not with spite, but with the exhausted eyes of a woman who had nothing left to explain. Jean looked up. For a second, their eyes met through the window. And in that second, everything was understood. No more chances. No more excuses. No more pretending love could survive where protection had failed. He lowered his gaze, placed the note gently back on the box, and began loading his things into the car. Marie didn't watch him leave. She didn't need to, because this time the goodbye was final, and it was hers. That night, the house felt different, not quieter, lighter, as if the walls themselves had exhaled for the first time in weeks. Marie ordered a large pepperoni pizza, Elise's favorite. No fancy dinner, no tense conversation, just soft lighting, warm food, and a mother and daughter who had been through a storm and survived. They sat cross-legged on the floor, sharing slices straight from the box. Marie popped open a bottle of grape soda with a smile. "Tonight," she said, raising her glass, "we celebrate peace." Elise giggled and clinked her plastic cup to Marie's. The TV played an old comedy rerun in the background, the canned laughter filling the spaces that had once held shouting, crying silence. And then it happened. Elise laughed. Not politely, not nervously. A real laugh, bright, full, and unguarded. It rang through the room like music, echoing off the very walls that had once heard nothing but arguments and pain. Marie didn't say anything. She just closed her eyes for a second, letting the sound soak into her bones. And in that moment, she knew this house was finally healing. Later that night, after the last slice was gone and the credits rolled, Elise leaned into Marie's side, quiet now. Her little voice came soft, almost afraid to disturb the peace they had found. "Mama?" Marie turned to her, brushing a stray hair behind Elise's ear. "Yes, baby." Elise hesitated. Then, in a voice cracked with worry, she sighed, "I was scared you were going to choose them." Marie's heart broke in the most silent way possible. She didn't rush to speak. She didn't fill the air with explanations. Instead, she gently lifted Elise into her lap, wrapped both arms around her, and held her like the most precious thing she had ever been given. Then she whispered, voice steady as truth, "I will never choose anyone over you. Not then, not now, not ever." Elise didn't respond with words, just a nod, a deeper snuggle, and a quiet tear that soaked into Marie's sweater. They sat like that for a long time. No sound, no fear, just love reclaiming its space. And somewhere deep in Marie's soul, something settled. Not everything had been saved, but the most important thing had. The house had gone quiet again, but this time it wasn't the silence of fear, it was the silence of peace. Marie stepped onto the porch with a mug of chamomile tea, its steam curling like mist beneath the stars. She settled into the old wooden rocking chair, Alexandre's chair, and pulled the knitted shawl tighter around her shoulders. Above her, the sky stretched wide and endless pinpricked with stars. One of them flickered brighter than the rest. Marie smiled. She thought of Alexandre. She thought of how he used to sit right where she sat now, rubbing his tired hands after long days of building a house he never got to grow old in. She thought of how he laughed, how he whispered to Elise as a baby, how he had loved with such quiet strength. And then she thought of the woman she used to be, grieving, lost, hoping someone else could come in and rebuild what had been shattered. But tonight, beneath that starlit sky, Marie didn't feel broken anymore. She didn't need saving. She had become the builder. Brick by emotional brick, choice by painful choice, she had reconstructed a life where Elise could feel safe, seen, and loved. And for the first time in a long time, Marie felt proud. The porch light cast a soft golden glow across the floorboards as Marie stood up, finishing the last sip of her tea. She walked quietly back into the house, each step deliberate grounding. Upstairs, Elise snooped soundly, her breathing slow, steady, safe. Marie peeked into her room and smiled. The stuffed bunny was tucked neatly under Elise's arm. The new bedsheets, soft floral and chosen by Elise herself, gently rose and fell with every breath. Marie tiptoed inside and sat on the edge of the bed. She ran a hand through Elise's hair, then leaned in close and whispered, not to wake her, but to bless her. "You are the reason I keep going, sweetheart. We don't need a perfect family, just a safe one, and I'll make sure we always have that." Her voice cracked slightly at the end, but she didn't wipe the tear that followed. She let it fall. Because sometimes a tear isn't pain. Sometimes it's peace. Maybe you've never had to stand between your child and someone who claimed to love them, but maybe one day you will. Maybe you've stayed silent to keep the peace, even when your heart screamed that something wasn't right. Maybe you've convinced yourself that enduring is the same as loving. But Marie's story reminds us of something we all know deep down, that real love doesn't stay quiet when someone we love is in danger. So if you've ever stood at that impossible crossroads between keeping the harmony and protecting your child, let this be your reminder. Love that is real never stays silent. Not when a child is crying. Not when a home becomes a battlefield. Not when someone says, "Let her live in the dog box." Marie didn't choose conflict. She chose Elise. And in doing so, she chose peace. Now ask yourself, if it were your child sitting on that porch, would you have the courage to say, "Enough"? Because sometimes peace doesn't come from staying quiet. It comes from finally speaking up. Sometimes protecting peace means disturbing the silence. In life, we're taught to keep things calm, to be polite, to avoid confrontation. But silence, when someone is being mistreated, especially someone we love, is not peace. It's surrender. Marie's story reminds us that true strength doesn't come from staying silent. It comes from choosing what's right, even when it breaks what's comfortable. You don't need a perfect family. You need a safe one. And safety sometimes starts with one brave no more. So if you ever find yourself torn between avoiding conflict and protecting what matters most, choose to protect. Because love, real love, isn't soft. It's fierce, and it speaks up. If this story touched your heart even just a little, if you believe that every child deserves safety, that every mother deserves the right to protect her child without apology, then please subscribe to Through Her Eyes. This channel is more than stories. It's about truth, courage, and the voices that were once silenced finally being heard. Click subscribe, turn on notifications, and share this with someone who needs to be reminded love doesn't stay silent.